Hey everybody, it's Allison with the Zionsville Chamber, and today we are here with the Animal Control Officer of the Boone County Sheriff's Department and our sponsor for this video series of Behind the Scenes, which is the Ladybug. So we're going to talk to you about what it looks like to be behind the scenes with the Animal Control Division.
This is Deputy, okay, even better, Deputy Fisher, and she is the Animal Control Officer Deputy for, for the Boone County Sheriff's Office. And we thought this might be a really interesting behind the scenes because do you know what an Animal Control Officer does? I don't. And the Ladybug works with them whenever there are some things that maybe are kind of beyond the scope of what they do here. So tell us what you see and what you do.
So my primary function for the Animal Control Division is to investigate animal cruelty and investigate crimes and situations against and involving animals. Typically what I'm working with is domestic animals, though we are a very rural community, so we also see a lot of livestock issues. Where the Ladybug typically comes in is if there's a pest or rodent issue. That's not something that I handle because it's not a matter of public safety necessarily, it's not a matter of animal cruelty, and they have the permits and the license to handle those types of areas.
So if someone has something going on inside their home then, and it's more like a raccoon, they probably don't need to call the sheriff, they probably need to call the Ladybug.
It kind of depends on the situation. We will respond if it's a raccoon in the living room of the house.
Oh, well.
But if it's a raccoon in the attic or a raccoon in the crawl space, we're not necessarily going to respond. But if it's something that we could potentially help with, we'll respond. But most of the time, raccoons, rats, bats, snakes, moles, those kind of things, we're going to refer to the Ladybug.
Yeah, and I know they've dealt with snakes in a house and in a crawl space.
Yeah, we got a call, probably the best call I think we've ever got is just a few months ago, a lady in Zionsville called, and she said in her basement she had been hearing noises for weeks. They weren't sure what it was, and her husband, they had a drop ceiling in the basement. Her husband lifted his head up in the drop ceiling and saw two large snakes. In fact, when we caught them, we had to hold them above our head. They were so long. So situations like that. Of course, I did not touch. I was as far away as possible. But those are the kind of projects that we work on when they're deep inside of a house and they need looking.
Yeah, and there was another one where your husband, Johnny, was crawling around finding snake skins.
Yes, yeah, we definitely find a lot of snake stuff in Zionsville right now. So wouldn't be something that you think, but yeah, for sure.
So if someone is hearing some noises, that's probably, again, a case where they're going to call Ladybug rather than calling the Sheriff's Department. And again, like you said, unless it's in your living room.
Right.
And then I'm just going to vacate the house and be like, anybody else want to go in? Great. Not me.
Well, and I'll get calls vice versa where they'll say there's an animal there's a dog that's been on a chain for all day long without water or shelter. And that's when I say, you need to call the Sheriff's Department to talk to Hannah about that.
Right.
So we do get a lot of back and forth between us where it's like, oh, you gotta go to this person or somebody else.
So what does a day in the life with you look like?
So it really depends. I am the only animal control officer for the entire county, and so the way it's set up is I work through the sheriff's office, but the cities and the towns more or less contract with us to come into the cities and towns and provide these services. So a lot of times on my days off, I'll get calls that come in. So I kind of usually start with a to-do list when I get to work for the first shift of the week. And so it could be anything from a dog without shelter and water. It could be a cruelty case. We've had a couple things happen where people are beating animals. We've had bestiality cases. We've had aggravated assaults against animals. Most of the time what we're seeing is in terms of animal cruelty within the county is more of the passive neglect. Somebody is failing to do something. They're failing to provide shelter. They're failing to provide water. They're failing to provide food, something of that effect. And so my primary function then is to go in and determine, okay, is it an educational situation where the owner just doesn't know, or is it they are choosing to not care for this animal properly? So I would say 80% of my calls are related to cruelty and abuse investigations. And then the other things are dogs running at large, people calling me for calls that I then defer back to her, and more of barking complaints, those types of things, just kind of petty level complaints that are coming in.
So, if someone does have something that they're concerned about, would you send you an email? Do you give the sheriff's department a call and then they send it on to you? How does that work?
So there's a couple ways to contact me. There's a phone number for dispatch that you can call in and report it that way. We have an email address to the Animal Control Division also. People tag me on Facebook. Please don't tag me on Facebook, but it happens. People will send me messages. My direct phone number is everywhere. You can contact me that way. But the best route, especially if it's an emergency situation, whether it's a matter of life or death for the animal or if a person has been hurt by an animal, is to either call 911 or call the dispatch number.
Okay. So this is an interesting series that the Ladybug has sponsored because it really is about a day in the life. So what are some of the interesting things that you've seen or you've been able to encounter?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So I'm friends with a lot of animal control officers nationwide, and they're always talking about these weird animals that they come across. We in Indiana don't really have many exotic animals or weird animals, but I've seen some ferrets, I've seen a chameleon. Somebody called in to report an alligator, which I have it in my truck. I can show you.
An alligator? What?
I'll get it.
Oh my God.
We'll stand back.
No.
So somebody called in to report this alligator, which turned out to just be a toy. But the way the picture was
That's
posted on Facebook was he was just chilling in their grass. And so they sent me this picture, and with just grass and him, I was calling DNR, I was calling my boss, and so ever since that call, he rides around shotgun.
That's amazing.
So
That is really funny.
I thought we were going to the back of the truck and I'm like, and I'm out.
So we've had some entertaining calls. The lady who reported this felt really bad when she found out that it was fake. But as heavy as law enforcement can be, that made my week.
No
That was an
kidding.
excellent call.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I bet that one's one that you can share with your group and say,
Yeah.
okay, I've got one for you today.
Exactly.
So how long have you been doing this?
So I've been a deputy with the sheriff's office almost 5 years, and this is the start of year 4 for animal control.
Fantastic. So, there are a lot of groups in Boone County that kind of work in tandem, and they were saying, there are some things that the Ladybug has permitting for that they're not able to do. So what are some of the interesting things that you guys have seen?
One of the snakes was probably the coolest thing that we've ever seen, but another one that really sticks out in my mind was Christmas of last year. Somebody had called and they had a barn owl stuck in their chimney. So it had gone down the chimney, but it couldn't get up because its wingspan was too long. And they had closed the doors on the chimney and waited for us to get there. And when we got there, Johnny was able to grab it by its feet. And because how are you going to get an owl out of a tight space like that? And then we also had to think about the client's safety in the home. And so Johnny grabbed it by its feet and was able to get it out and release it right there on the property. And it was really a majestic moment to see that owl come out of that chimney and be able to get it safely to where it wasn't harmed. So that was probably one of the coolest things we've ever done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you ever have any questions, please reach out to the Ladybug or the Sheriff's Department if it's with regard to an animal, because we're all animal lovers here. We love to see animals well taken care of. We want to make sure that you're informed on how to do that. So wait for more interesting stories coming from behind the scenes in different jobs. And again, this is the series that's sponsored by the Ladybug. So thanks for joining us.